biggest things that people misunderstand right now is they think if you don't have video, you don't have brand. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm so excited to list my home today. Even people that want to do not think that. When people are creating content like, oh, I have to tell personal stories. You don't have to tell personal stories. You just have to think, fears, frustrations, want aspirations. I think most agents, the biggest unfair advantage you can have, especially in today's media world, is...
Today I sat down with one of this industry's most influential figures. He also happens to be a close personal friend and mentor of mine, Sharran Srivatsaa. Long before his tenure as president at Real Broker, Sharran's 4 times been mentioned as an Inc. 500 entrepreneur for his 5 successful exits in the last 19 years. Most notably in our industry, his growth of TELUS properties to $3.4 billion in sales before a successful sale to Douglas Elliman. But you probably know him for his content, whether you've been in the audience during one of his keynote speeches, or you listened to his business school podcast, or maybe you've even seen his reels on social media. You know that he is extremely tactical, very approachable, and incredibly kind. If you're looking to succeed in real estate, you are not going to want to miss a second of today's conversation. So sit back and let's learn how we can brand it like Sharran. Agents are following trends, and now, like 2 weeks ago, people were talking about, they're like, oh, overproduced is dead, right? Alex is now going super that, right? And so now everyone's like following that. And I feel like that's where there's going to be all the competition. Like when everyone, do the thing where you're not competing with everyone at the highest, where there's the most noise. Yeah. So just stick with the thing. Like everyone keeps bugging me about doing listing videos and not and I'm like, no, I'm just keeping the thing that generates the income for the team and the business, the thing, and it's been in fashion and out of fashion 5 times since I've started.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to take it. So take it wherever you want, because I'll tell you that one of the biggest things that people misunderstand right now is they think if you don't have video, you don't have brand.
Yeah.
Right? That is,
for sure,
that is wrong.
Yeah.
It's not even remotely right. There's Seth Godin has no videos. He has a blog.
Yes. Yeah.
So, so there, yes, he has some, but it's all him on other shows. He's not doing any personal branding, but he writes a blog every day. Yeah. And for him, cadence is brand.
And that's great. And one of the things even with Seth is that his brand is it's almost what he doesn't say. The beauty is in the brevity, right? It's just so, a lot of people can say something smart if you just let them keep talking and talking, keep talking. Of course. But he does it so well, so quickly, so brief.
Yeah. Well, just take it any direction. And I have it'll get where it needs to get.
I think we got to bring up the Ducks at some point too.
Well, we can tell the branding story of the Ducks. I've never told that anywhere.
I would love that.
Yeah. I was going to make a podcast just on the branding story of the Ducks, but I can be like, hey, here's what I want to do.
Let's do this. That's great. That's great. This is the kind of stuff. The hope is that that there might be the odd viewer that's outside of the real estate world, that it gets excited by it. So what is, are we just filming now? Yep. Oh, okay, great. All right, perfect. Yeah, there is no intro. I film a little intro separately. No, so you don't have to worry about it. But, okay, so Sharran, the Ducks, it's a thing for you. I send you pictures. I'm like, hey, I created this cool thing with the Real logo on it. You're like, great, is the Ducks on the side? What's your obsession with the Anaheim Ducks?
So the Anaheim Ducks, for people that don't know, is the greatest hockey team in the history of mankind. No,
I was going to say nobody knows that. No. In fact, nobody knows that.
No, but I was never... I didn't grow up a hockey fan, and I am obsessed with the Ducks. And I've never shared this publicly before, but it is my dream to buy the Anaheim Ducks. And now, most people, when they think about a dream to buy a hockey team or a football team or a sports franchise,
like Gary Vee, very famously.
There's a story behind it, right? And it generally has one of 3 things. It's either a personal story, as hey, like Gary Vee, my mom did this, she knitted me this jacket, I have this sweater, she did this, and therefore I want to do this because I'm a Jersey boy, right? Yeah. It's very personal for Gary. Or you have the Mark Cubans of the world who says, hey, I made $1 billion selling my company to Yahoo, and I have this money, and I'm going to kind of buy this franchise and do more things with it. Or you have the third, which is, I think the bucket that I'm in, is neither of those 2 things. And the bucket that I'm in is, I have this dream to build and create something that has not been created before. And I'll tell you what that is. So I'll do a little quiz with you.
Okay.
When you think about the All-American teams,
Yeah.
Right? When you think about all-American teams in football, who do you think of?
Like probably like the Patriots.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not bad actually, right? So when you think about America's team.
Yeah, I think of like Chicago Bears. I think of like those sort of original.
Yeah. So
teams.
so
Cowboys.
the Cowboys. Right? So when you say America's team, you think the Dallas Cowboys.
Sure. Yeah.
When you think baseball, right? You think the Yankees.
Okay.
It's America.
Yes.
It's America's team, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
When you think basketball, now you have a little bit of, you know, you can say it's probably the Lakers or the Bulls based on where you are. Maybe it's the Knicks or whatever, but it's generally the Lakers or the Bulls.
I am Canadian, so we could have said the Flames, the Canada's team.
Yeah. So, but America's team, right? I think America's team is so powerful.
Yeah.
But when you think America's team for hockey, not Canada's team, when you think America's team for hockey, there is no America's team.
No.
So what I would like to do is I would like to make the Anaheim Ducks America's team for hockey. And there's a working strategy to make that happen. And that is, most people, like you go, Mark Cuban, who's a billionaire, he's going to take this and be like, well, I'm going to put some money behind it. I'm going to put a campaign behind it. I'm going to put advertising behind it. And you put so many dollars behind reaching this goal that it's a marketing-based strategy. And I was like, how do I make it a branding play? Right? Which is why it makes a lot of sense on your show. And my idea is to take 100 of the top influencers that I advise and I'm connected with and have all of them, along with me, crowdfund to buy the Anaheim Ducks. So now you have the Alex Hormozis of the world, who, by the way, if Alex is watching, he will attest to this.
He's in.
He's in. and so you will have on Alex Hormozzi's profile, Alex Hormozzi, owner at Anaheim Ducks. So now think about this. Think about the top influencers in the world making the Anaheim Ducks America's team, right? It is the quintessential branding play of our generation.
Absolutely, and it's made for the moment.
Correct. And the best part about this is it has a great America's backing story, which is the Ducks were owned by Disney. It was originally the Mighty Ducks, right? And so what is more quintessentially American than Disney? So when people come to Southern California, Anaheim, California, they go to Disneyland and they should go to the Mighty Ducks Museum. So my goal is to create and build and brand the Anaheim Ducks as America's team.
Okay, I love that. Now, first off, I would not be surprised to see this all come together. I'm hoping to be in that 90 to 100 influencers.
Yeah, you're in, right?
Okay, great. I'm in.
Can we get it on the show?
We can get it in. I would love to add that to my thing. But now I'm curious about this. But this idea, though, about branding yourself as like America's team. Now, like obviously, being in the industry, you serve as the president at Real Broker. I'm just a real estate agent here in Calgary, Alberta. And a lot of us as agents, we're trying to create personal brands for ourselves. And I think many of us outside of your media world have gotten to know Sharran and the personal brand that you've been building on. Obviously, it extends far beyond real estate, but especially in the real estate world recently with guys like Byron Lazine saying that you're the best executive hire in years. I'm sure you just love for me to layer on as many compliments as possible. And at the end of this, you guys say, yes, they were all right. But that brand piece, how do agents take a strategy that you're just talking about right now? Like, is there any through line for them to create a space like that in their market where they can be seen as someone, or they can attach themselves to an ideal like that?
Yeah.
What's up, guys? It's Brad McCallum here. Sorry to interrupt the episode. I hope you're enjoying it so far. There's just something I wanted to share with you. Have you yet had a chance to register for BAM Mania happening October 18th at the Circa Las Vegas? Now, this is going to be an absolutely crazy event. We've got guys like, check this out. We've got Sharran Srivatsaa, we've got Eric Simon, Byron Lazine, we've got Move Me to Tennessee, Chelsea Pites, we've got Neil Dingra, Tom Toole, so many more incredible speakers. And at a time in our industry when so much is changing, you want to be on top of it all, and BAM has it all. So it's going to be in Vegas, it's going to be an amazing time, and of course, at the completion of the event on the 18th, there's a BAM party. If you've never been to a BAM party, they are like nothing else. It's going to absolutely crush, and I hope to see you there.
So when you don't have a strategy, everything looks like an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to kind of have some strategy as you get going. But here's the hard part. No idea comes out fully formed. So most people will wait for strategy, wait for implementation, wait for the inspiration to do something. And so I believe that there are two phases to building a great brand. The first phase is the exploration phase, because ideas don't come out fully formed. And most people get stuck there because they don't see a lot of progress there. And they're like, I'm not getting anywhere. But if you know, and you can label that is the phase you're in the exploration phase. And what you do there is you experiment.
Yeah.
And people don't believe in the power of exploration because you don't get to the thing that you want to build, because a personal brand, the key to a personal brand is the first word, personal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So a personal exploration is really important. Now, for some people that can take days, some people can take weeks, and for someone like me, it took years. And so I'll tell you that exploration phase. I struggled for so many years, Brad, trying to figure out what this brand was. And I still haven't figured it out, but I will tell you I have a strategy of sorts. And that strategy, I was working with my coach on this, and she said, hey, why do you feel so disconnected? Why do you feel tired and resentful working so hard in this exploration phase? And that's when it clicked for me. Oh, I'm in this exploration phase. I should understand it and feel good about it.
You were thinking, I should be further down this road.
Correct.
Right? Or in a different mindset. Yeah.
So she said something amazing to me. She said, we need to not figure out what your brand is. We need to figure out how your brand is. And I go, wait, what? I was like, I want to figure out what my brand is. And she goes, no, we need to figure out how your brand is, because how you show up, how you share, how you contribute, that is really important. And I go, I don't understand. She goes, yes, that's the problem. Because if you showed up and you knew your how, then you'd figure out the what. And I go, that's really strange. So we spent a few weeks figuring out how my brand was, and we came up with two words: tactically inspirational.
Yeah.
So if you share that with someone that knows me, they're like, okay, that's very aligned with me.
It's really brilliant, because we get a lot of tactics, right? You get a lot of data from a lot of different presenters, and from like KCM, like Keep It Current Matters, and all these, and a lot of people, they take it in and they're like, okay, now I see the world through this set, and now what?
Yeah.
Right? And so you sometimes, or you get the other side of things where people are motivational and inspirational, and you feel so great, and you walk out and you're like,
now what?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Tactically inspirational.
So that was the how. That was the beginning of everything for me, because once you know how it works, now I can say, all right, I'm delivering this presentation. How do I make it personally mine? Well, you will never see a presentation from me that is 12 stories and on stage with like one slide. You will never see that, because that's not tactically inspirational. So I have found a way to live my value of how the brand works in a very tactically inspirational way. So every Instagram post, every email, every video, there is, if I don't hit the tactically inspirational, I will feel like it is not infused with me in a lot of ways. So that
Understood.
That was the demarcation point from exploration to understanding of what actually comes out.
Some definition now.
Right. Yeah. The second thing is, once you have that, once you know how, you can then figure out the what. Because now you know every piece of content or everything that you make, you live through that lens. And so what I would offer as kind of point number one is, figure out when you show up, how is that content truly yours? Right? Like there is a, take our friend Tyler Hassman, right? Yeah. Every single video is him starting the exact same way with the wide shot every time, right? Yeah. So he figured out that, hey, I'm going to, no matter whether it's a $430,000 house or a $14 million house, it is the same shot.
He's going to step up to the drone, and it's going to pull away, and it's going to give you context, and people are like, that's a Tyler.
Right. And so the key is to figure out the how. Now, the what, most people don't have, and it's okay, right? But at least people will know that you're on point and you're on brand. When people say you're on brand, that just means the implementation of stuff is in the right way, right? So if someone watches a video from me, you will know very quickly, you're like, that doesn't feel right. Like that's not, and that's not because, so now it also expands across topics. I mean, that's coming point number two, is in the last 10 years, I've had a chance to run a real estate brokerage, sell it, run a technology company that you were a client of, sell that, buy multifamily, I'm still working on that, run a private equity firm, do that, take time off, do that, and then now be a real. So like in the last, there's been a variety of the what's that I've had to do, but the through line is the tactically inspirational. And if you can hit that, it gets a lot easier.
And to your point, I think I love that you define that with your mentor, but you were doing that the whole time, right? Like that was a constant. So it was more like just a revealing of like just defining like, okay, what is that thing that is constantly showing up at every speaking engagement and every interaction? And it's true with like legitimately every interaction, right? Like just walking in, everyone stops, talks. You have an insane ability to have this feeling that everyone has their own Sharran story. Like everyone feels like I'll tell you my story. Of course, like when I first met you, I had released 4 videos on YouTube. You had been flown in to visit some friends and speak in front of a Remax office in Calgary that I happened to be there. And afterwards, when I was talking with Cliff Stevenson and I had a chance to meet you, Cliff's like, hey, have you seen some of Brad's videos? I show you, you look at about 45 seconds and he said, Brad, do you want to be the video guy, or do you want to be the guy who sells all the homes? I was like, I'd love to be the guy who sells all the homes, Sharran. And you're like, okay, so check that. Here's just a framework, since I don't really know you, Brad, but here's a framework that all the content that you create should serve this purpose. And so for me, as I've built my brand, I've watched my content come in fashion and then go out of fashion. I've watched the dancing videos. I've watched people do the high quality talking head videos. I've watched so many great people who I'm super inspired by. But I keep showing up and creating a very similar style of content as sort of a foundation, because at the end of the day, it fit into that first framework that you told me to do. It had to be in service of the people that I was working with. And it served me so incredibly well because, a week ago, a friend of yours, Alex Hermosi, that everyone really knows as a personal branding and probably one of the greatest business minds of our generation, has just recently came out and said, hey, I'm going to get away from this highly produced content. And then all of a sudden you see our friends over at Brokerage and Media and every agent everywhere saying, okay, that's it. We're going to stop doing highly produced. We're going to go to like more raw. I heard vlog is in style. For a while, Casey Neistat was out of fashion. Now he's back in. What is agents end up chasing the algorithm. And if they do that, I feel like they always end up staying about 3 months behind it. So finding that how that they want to show up, that's that first key.
That's the first key. But here's the second one. You asked a really good question. Whenever we feel like we have to chase a trend, the way I think about the world is saying, all right, show me another part of the world where trends have happened and gone away. Where is there more of a constant that is similar? So I'll give you an example. The movie world, right? Yeah. So you take a George Lucas film. Yeah. Every Star Wars is built the same exact way over the last 50 years. Yeah. There's no change. Yeah. There's no trend. It is the same exact thing. And the recent author producer that I'm tracking right now, I'm so in love with him. He's Aaron Sorkin. So if you, amazing guy. And here's what he teaches. You need intention and an obstacle. Everything is intention and obstacle for him, right? So he says, hey, take the Lion King. Yeah. Simba, intention, little cub wants to rule the pride. Yeah. Intention. Obstacle, Uncle Scar wants to rule the pride instead and is, being the obstacle, right? Yeah. And so the entire story is how Simba overcomes this obstacle and then comes back to rule the pride. Take Star Wars. You've got the Force, but you got this obstacle, which is the dark side. Of course. And then every story is how do you actually overcome that obstacle and be back to this, the right side. If you take any story, you'll realize that there's an intention and obstacle thing. Now, implementation of that, whether you do raw or not raw, written or audio, produced or not produced, well, video or written or blog, email or blog, it doesn't matter, right? But the power of having the right, that's why the second step, the frameworks are important, because I will tell you, if I had my way, I would only do two things. I would only write email and record podcasts, because I process the world in audio, and I process and I communicate in writing. So when I talk through my ideas, that's why if my podcast, which is called Business School, is literally my best, rawest ideas. There is no other medium that has better ideas than my podcast. That's my favorite medium. I process all my ideas live on the podcast. And then once I have it, then I write email associated with that. If I could get away from doing video, if I could get away from, I would totally do that. But our core community is on video-based platforms. So I have to kind of be there for that. So, but the one thing in the last, I write roughly I send roughly 1 million emails a month. I've done it for the last 7+ years. Every email that I write has intention and obstacle.
Yeah.
So there's a story, right? It's like, hey, today I wanted to go run a bunch of errands and I wanted to get my son an acai bowl. Obstacle, I got a flat tire.
Yes.
Right? But the interesting part about the flat tire,
I remember the email.
Right.
I've read it.
Yeah, the great part about that is you may think that's not interesting, but there's something interesting in the story, which is people don't realize the storytelling component of it, where I actually show a picture of the flat tire in the email, right? That's proof. And the second part of that is, well, I was supposed to take this acai bowl to my son, and I couldn't because I had this flat tire. And so my son texts my wife and says, hey, since dad couldn't get me an acai bowl, can I get an Xbox gift card? Which is, so I screenshotted that and I put that in the email.
I remember, yeah.
Right? Because that's intention and obstacle and how he overcame that obstacle, right? So the crazy part about that story is, now that could have been a story. That's a piece in our show today. I can make a podcast about it. I can be like, hey, if we don't get one thing, we want to get another thing. We feel like we need to, if we don't get X, we need to replace that with that Y. If one door closes, another door opens. All of these things I can come up with based on this one thing of intention and obstacle. So the thing that doesn't change is people think that, oh, you can only make videos this way. But I'm like, how you write email is just like how you do a podcast. It's just like how you do a video. But first one, figure out your how. Second one is have a good framework for how you approach the world. But I'll give you my third one, is proof over promise. Like you and I talk about these words a lot. The main reason for proof is that, especially in real estate, the current world feels like we're commoditized. They feel like all real estate agents are the same.
Yeah.
Right? I'll give you a crazy story. I asked my CPA this question. My CPA was like, hey, Sharran, can you recommend a real estate agent for XYZ home? I said, don't you know one? They're like, yeah, I do. You know, they're kind of all the same. I was like, time out. You just said all real estate agents are the same in Los Angeles? That's crazy. And he says, he's like, well, you know, they send the same things. I feel like they do the same thing. I go, well, how would you feel if I said all CPAs are the same? And he goes, well, but they're not. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you real estate agents are not the same. So easy piece of advice for agents, not branding related, but most of our SOI sources don't know exactly what we do and what makes us different, or our sphere sources. So CPAs, attorneys, insurance brokers, bankers, whatever, right? So I would offer every single agent once a week to reach out to a CPA or an accountant or an attorney or whatever who's a good referral source and say, so let's say, Brad, you're an attorney. I'd say, hey, Brad, if you don't mind, I would love to spend maybe 10, 15 minutes with you. I'm happy to come to your office. I want to show you the exact presentation that I deliver for sellers, and I would love for you to show me how to weave you in.
Brilliant.
Right?
Yeah.
So now, two things happen. Brad, the attorney, says, cool, I want to see what Sharran does differently, and he's going to weave me in. That's really strange. Now I get to pitch the 7-step process that I use to do XYZ. Yeah. Right? So now you're the only agent. I'm the only agent that has actually shown you my process. He thinks everyone else is exactly the same.
Exactly.
And now you tell me, hey, Sharran, the next time this happens, weave me in. If this happens, weave me in. If that happens, whether that happens or not, now you have a symbiotic relationship. I know exactly what you do. You know exactly what I do. And so when this attorney refers me, says, hey, you can say, hey, Jimmy, here's the interesting thing. You should talk to my friend Sharran, who's a real estate agent in Los Angeles. Sharran has this, and this, because I gave you the presentation.
Yeah.
And so it's not just like, oh, I trust Sharran, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Right? That's how
this
people
takes it that extra step further. they've seen it. And and as I'm sure you get this all the time, but people will ask you for referrals. I get asked for referrals all the time. And there's great people I know that I know are wonderful humans, and I have no idea how they do professionally, and I will withhold a recommendation based out of just respect for the person that's asking for it, because I don't quite have that.
Absolutely. That is if you could make one, pitch is a bad word, but one symbiotic conversation like that, I call it the referral backdoor.
I like it.
The way you actually do it is you make sure all your SOI sources know exactly what you do so that they can pitch for you. You need to release evangelists into the world. Otherwise they're just referring us because they like us.
Yeah.
And suddenly, let's say they like someone else, you're done, right?
Absolutely.
So the commoditization of what we do is so high. So which means that people will start saying things like, oh, in a commoditized world, Brad, we need to add more value.
Yeah.
Those are three really terrible words. Add more value. No one understands what that means, right? So to you, add more value something. To me, add more value something. And my add more value may not even be any value, right? That may be showing up to an appointment with flowers. Yeah, sure, that makes sense, but that may not get you the listing, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I think about adding more value, I understand that, hey, I'm commoditized, so I have to add more value. And why do I add more value? To show that I'm different. So if I'm going to show that I'm different, I'm showing unique things, which means they have to believe me because they're not the same.
Yeah.
And people can't believe unique things because they have a belief problem, because they just don't believe you, because everyone says that they're number one and everyone says that they can do X, Y, Z. And then you have a belief problem. The only thing that solves a belief problem is proof.
Yeah.
Belief is all about, hey, when you list with me, I promise to do ABC. When you list with me, but when you show up in the appointment and you say, hey, Sharran, we'd love to, when we list your home, I have three interesting things that I want to show you. In fact, we did this for our client down the street. Can I show you? And you show them the video, right? Now they see themselves in the video that you made. You don't say, I'm going to make a video like this. You say, let me show you. Now they start seeing themselves in your process.
Yes.
And that proof is insanely, insanely powerful. And that's a big part of your brand.
When we show up for listing presentations now, oftentimes the sellers will meet us at the door and they'll say, so here's what we're thinking for the opening shot. And if they say that,
you're done.
The worst thing I could do is start to try to sell them on our services, because this is now about them realizing their vision. They've already came here with the idea of it. But I think that was interesting when you were saying like about value, right? Because that's like, it's just I find it such a challenging buzzword. Like my skin kind of crawls a little bit when I'm saying, I'm just trying to add value. Because I'm always very suspect about whether or not I am adding value, right? Like even on a podcast like this, I'm always like, okay, can I add something to this conversation or not? And so what I find, like, value is it's only defined by whether or not they're receiving.
100%.
And so if you don't understand what it is that they need, what challenge they're facing, what they're dealing with in their lives, and you're not addressing, you haven't stayed curious enough to ask enough questions, then how on earth could you be providing them value?
You're spot on, and there is a hack to that.
Okay.
The hack is, we listen to what they want. We try to decipher what they want, and we're like, oh, I think they're asking about this. Maybe I'll talk about that. I think they're asking about this. I'll talk about that. And that is the big disconnect. What you want to do is you want to have a joint artifact.
Okay.
So a joint artifact. So essentially when you say, let me show you, and you show the video, now both of you are commenting on a joint artifact.
Got you.
So it's not about them thinking about whether Brad's adding value. They're like, do I like this artifact? Can I see it in the process? And the way you choose that is these three words: show, flow, demo, right?
Yeah.
Show as in, do you show them something? Flow as in, do you walk them through the 3 steps of doing something? And your demo is like, hey, can I demonstrate? Like, I click a button and these 4 things happen. Or can I make a call and these 4 things happen? And can you actually demonstrate what you do? When you do that, you have this joint artifact that people can work with. And now they're not choosing you. They've already chosen you. They're just choosing the process. They're just making it work. So you take away all pressure from them and you.
I love that.
So people put a lot of pressure on themselves on what to say and how to say it. But I'm like, what to show and how to show it.
So much better.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you can, I think people will forgive the ums, the ahs, the missed words, this script that didn't quite come together. But if they know how you feel and that you're invested either in them or their goals, like the way I always look at it is, very early on in my career, this lady called me up and she was looking for a home, and she didn't speak great English, and she said, "Can you meet me at this street corner?" And now I've been a real estate agent for 7 years. I almost never have driven in a car with a client. Everyone just takes their own vehicles these days, right? So I go show up at this residential community street corner, and the woman gets in the car with me. She's very quiet. We go look at a few homes. I'm kind of trying to build like a little rapport, kind of chat. And I can see that there's something just kind of like really bothering her. And after we go with the second or third time, she at some point tells me that the reason I'm picking her up on a street corner is that she's escaping an abusive relationship.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And I just, in that moment, I was about maybe 5 or 6 months in. It was right around the same time that I maybe produced my first video after almost not getting my dad's listing.
Yeah.
And I was just at this point when I realized I've been looking at this business through the idea of how do I get more leads? How do I get more business? Where's my next commission check coming from? And the question I should be asking is like, how do I become these people's like champion?
Mm-hmm.
Like how do I build something that's of so much more value to them than anyone else? And so for us, when I think of subscribers or followers, I don't think of them as potential leads or even connections. I think of them as an accruing mountaintop, that the higher it gets, the louder our voice will be to advocate for our clients. So when we create a piece of content that tries to break through the noise, or when we create a listing tour that really showcases their home, or when we tell the story of what they loved about their home through my mouth and into the buyer's ears, I bypass that buyer's agent. I don't trust that buyer's agent is going to pass on all that communication. I illustrate that value of like, we're going to be your champion. Like, as much as you care about this happening, we care about it through our storytelling.
I love it.
And that has been a big piece of it. And it's allowed for us, and of course, I'm sure, Sharran, everyone would say to you earlier, like, okay, well, that's great about the story with your son, but what if you don't think like that, right? But what's great about that story is when we talked about personal branding, it's the personal piece, right?
Yes.
You really can't like screw up being a person, right? If you're a good human being, right? You don't need the right setup or the right hook. People just kind of generate that. So if you read that story, that email like I read, the greatest part about that email for me is, yes, there's a learning there. There's all of that. But everyone opted in to learning more about who Sharran is. Mm-hmm. And you can't opt in and read that without feeling more connected to you. Mm-hmm. And so I always illustrate it between like Ryan Serhant's Instagram accounts. He's got the Ryan Serhant Instagram page, and then he's got the Serhant page, right? And he'll get hundreds of thousands of likes over here, and he might get 400 or 500 over here. And I always ask the audience, like, what's the difference between the two? And the only difference is the 4 letters, Ryan, right? It's like, and everyone will go follow Serhant because of Ryan,
right?
Otherwise, they don't care, right? It's like I love our Real Brokerage brand, but you'll always see our agents or our leadership, their personal brands, getting more follows, more likes, more shares than you will as a corporate level. I remember being at Remax and seeing that same thing. So how do you find an elegant way to sort of weave in those personal stories that agents can kind of
it's actually easier, and it goes back to exactly what you said, which is to be the champion for your clients, right? Mm-hmm. And for most people, it is like, oh, that's a cool thing to say.
Yeah.
Right? But we need to put language around it. Mm-hmm. And the language around it is these 4 words: fears, frustrations, wants, and aspirations, right? Whenever I sit down to write an email, and to me, email is like, an email can become a blog post, an email can become a video, an email can become a podcast. Yeah. Because what you do with an email, you break down your thoughts, right? And so I always, when I approach email, I can write email pretty quickly, but I instantly think about fears, frustrations, wants, and aspirations. Mm-hmm. So the fears and frustrations are one bucket, wants and aspirations are the other bucket. So for example, let's talk about real estate agents. When I think about a real estate agent, I need to come up with a fear or a frustration. So let's talk about the frustration is my lead generation is up and down. Therefore, my frustration, lead generation is up and down. Therefore, my income is up and down. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I don't know where my next paycheck is going to come from. So the fear is, man, do I have to go get a job?
Yeah.
Right?
Like at its core.
Every single real estate agent at some point in time has thought that thing, right? And I know real estate agents that have struggled and gotten a job. I know real estate agents that have been like, I'm not going to get a job. I'm just going to drive Uber. I know real estate agents that have been like, I'm not going to do either thing. I'm just going to get a loan. I know real estate agents like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to join a team. Whatever it may be. At the core of it, I have irregular lead generation or opportunities. Because of that, I have irregular deals because of irregular income. Therefore, I don't have a predictable lifestyle. So I fear that I'm going to have to go do something I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say I'm writing an email with that. My email will start with, hey, if you're a real estate agent, and you have irregular lead generation, meaning you don't have enough leads to work right now that you're bored with, I have 3 ideas for you.
So like a sorting hook kind of to get people started.
Yeah, so that's called a dog whistle, right?
Okay, yes.
So I'm essentially saying, hey, if you're this person and you have this, then I have something for you.
Yeah.
Right? So now the way you sort through that is it makes my content super purposeful. So I start with their wants and aspirations in mind. So now my piece just needs to be like, hey, I found the fear and frustration. My strategy should be like, hey, I have a zero cost way for you to generate hot leads right now, but you have to spend 10 minutes doing it. If you're willing to do that, read below. Mm-hmm. So now I'm getting buy-in on, are you willing to put 10 minutes worth of effort? So now they're like, wait a minute. He knows I'm a real estate agent. He knows that my income is irregular. He knows that I've been thinking about other things. I don't have the money to spend. And if I just spend 10 minutes, there may be an idea here. Let me check this out, right? Yeah. But it's not like, hey, I'm Sharran, I'm amazing, I'm going to give you an idea. No, it's got nothing to do with me. It's only got to do with them, right? So fear is frustration. Now I can be tactically inspirational.
I love it.
Right? So now it's all woven together because I can just say, all right, so every time I sit down to write or sit down to talk or sit down to speak or sit down to make a video, I'm thinking, what fear or frustration exists and what want or aspiration exists? So like, I'll talk about, most people don't understand this. Real estate agents will tell me, I'm a listing agent. Mm-hmm. I'm a listing agent. And I only prospect for sellers. Sharran, tell me ways in which I can prospect for sellers. Yeah. Well, here's the crazy part around that. Most people don't believe this, but nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm so excited to list my home today.
Yeah.
Even people that want to do not think that, right? And there's a reason for that, because buying is aspirational, selling is operational.
Ah, I like it.
Right?
Yeah.
So now I always say, well, every selling conversation starts with the buying conversation for most people, right? Unless it's a second home market or what have you, right? So our job is to now say, all right, how do I hit the buying aspirational conversation? Because people are very comfortable talking about aspirational stuff. But the operational stuff, they're like, man, I just have to hire somebody to do this.
Yeah.
If you can solve the aspirational stuff, you've got the operational stuff. When you walk into a listing appointment and the client opens the door and says, hey, let me tell you where our opening shot would be, they're not thinking about selling the house. They're thinking about aspirationally how that gets positioned. So now they're in your process.
Yes.
Right?
That makes so much sense.
So people forget that. So when people are creating content like, oh, I have to tell personal stories. You don't have to tell personal stories. You just have to think fears, frustrations, wants, aspirations. Like what is a fear? But if you can't put language to a fear or a frustration or a want or aspiration, it gets very difficult.
It's also a great way to have hard conversations by sort of setting yourself up as the person that's dealt with this hard time or this challenge or this thing. It invites people and kind of gets their guards down, especially when it comes to I guess, like, you know, taking an action. I know one thing that I've found oftentimes is agents, there was this obsession a while back in the industry where any amount of friction whatsoever, like if there was like one extra thing to look at on the landing page, a person's not going to click, right? Oh, the leads might be lower quality, but if you just go with the Facebook like autofill feed, you just at least you're capturing like the lead or the contact information. And from day one, I've never taken the real paid approach. We've always taken the more organic approach. And what I've found is that there's really two schools of thought on this. And it's like you can go the absolute friction-free, where I think there's all the competition, the SEO, the ads, the PPC, the Facebook leads, all of that stuff where your whole goal is to capture an extremely cold audience. But what I think people forget, though, is that there are such things as fans. Like fans, and a fan will drive 3 hours, right, to wait, be first in line for like the iPhone 18, right? Like a fan will
go to your concert, we'll buy your album, we'll go to the documentary, we'll go visit the house that you grew up in. Like, a fan will take all the extra work. And what happens is, for me at least, what we found, and for a lot of the agents that I've talked to that have built what I think to be successful personal brands, is people will go through hoops, and every hoop that they go through, they get more attached to you long before they even have a chance to meet you. So there's this thing that you've said that I'd love for you to expand on, where you say celebrity is the most efficient business model. What does that mean? And could the average agent in Little Rock, Arkansas become a celebrity?
Yeah, so you can kind of play with a lot of times words are triggering for people, right? Some people feel like, oh, they can't become a celebrity, or some people feel like they can't build a brand. And the words that I use interchangeably are either celebrity or brand or fame. You can say like fame is the most efficient business model, right?
Yeah.
But you said something just super fascinating, right? So I'm an and kind of person, not an or kind of person. Whatever it takes to get the result that we want, right? Organically speaking, it is going to be hard to build a pure organic-based audience. It's just hard. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just takes time. And my thought process is to follow something that you said about fans, which is this guy. He's the founder of Wired magazine. His name is Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly wrote an article, which is 100% free right now. You can go Google it. It's one page.
I think I know which one.
It's called 1,000 True Fans.
It's the best.
Right? It is required reading for every single creator, right?
We'll put it in the show notes for sure.
It was written for indie creators of music and artists, etc. And his theory is that with 1,000 true fans, you can have a phenomenal career. Those are the people that show up, buy every album, show up on, like, they will drive, they will be with you, all of that, right? Now, how I thought about it is there's three ways in which I take that and amplify it. Okay, way number one is when somebody has to step, as you said, step through more, not hoops, but has to take an extra step of effort to be more connected to you. They're exponentially more connected to you, right? So when someone opts in on a landing page, they're a little bit more connected to you. When they binge watch your videos, they're a little bit more connected to you. And when they come to your event, they're a little bit more connected to you. And I call that time on brand.
Yeah.
Right? Time on brand is a new call to action. I'll give you a crazy example of this. Over the last 10 plus years, we've built like roughly a 200,000 person email list. And this is all organic opt-ins. In the last year and a half, and normally I would go to an event and I would, do a presentation, but before or after the presentation, I'd say, hey, here's a link to go get the slides. Here's a QR code to go get the slides. They would go to the QR code, they would put in their email address and get the slides. But I realized that time on brand is the most effective call to action. So I said, all right, I took away the gating from all of it. I was like, I'm on stage with you for 45 minutes. If that doesn't impact you, opting into an email list will do nothing. So I just give away. So I'm like, here's a QR code. And I actually tell people on stage, hey, here's a QR code. There's no opt-in, there's no landing page, there's no DM me X word, there's nothing. Just scan it and it'll take you right to the file right now. Hey, by the way, as soon as you get it in the audience, can you tell me that you got it? And then the audience will be like, got it.
Yeah.
And now you get this validation, this proof overall, which is insane, right? So that's number one, which is getting people to take little steps of effort with you, and then they feel closer to you, right? Number two, when you can get somebody who is interacting with you in some way to go to top 5% and bottom 5%. And what I mean by that is the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in emotion. If I can get somebody to feel this insane joy, they remember that moment. If I can get somebody to feel my pain or feel sadness, they remember that moment. And that is our vulnerability. And so when I'm writing a story and I'm like, all right, how do I tell the story where I can say, like the Anaheim Ducks story, I've told 0 people, right? For some people, it'll hit as a top 5% emotion, saying that, wow, he challenged me to think about something else, or man, I really want to buy the Rangers or the Flames or what have you, right? So the second phase is when someone goes through this emotional thing with you, it's really powerful. So when someone sees you on stage and you tell your dad's story, that is insanely emotional, right? Your dad was not going to hire you as his agent, and said, Brad, this is probably not your thing. Like, that's crazy, right? And that's a really emotional story, and that makes people closer to you, right? There's a third way, and this is where the controversy occurs. The third way is, it's not about and or. if someone is making a piece of organic content, it is my job to figure out how to take a piece of organic content that I think performed okay and show it to more people that are just like that.
Yeah.
So I think most agents, the biggest unfair advantage you can have, especially in today's media world, is look at your last 10 pieces of content objectively. Figure out which one has the best performance. Say it's a video on Instagram, and you have one video that has insane performance compared to everything else. What the algorithm is telling us is that people like it.
Levy, this is Calgary, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
People like it. And so what we should do is we should use low budget ads to get that in front of more people with no call to action. So people think that, oh yeah, I'm going to put this video, I'm going to run it as an ad, and then I'm going to get people to opt into an email list, whatever. Sure, you could do that, but you don't want, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is that
Time.
the video worked.
Yeah.
So I need to get more time on brand.
More time on brand. Yeah.
Because you've proven the creative.
Yes, you've proven the creative. This is something that I've became friends with Jimmy Mackin over the years. First I got introduced through Chris, and as I've gotten to know Jimmy and I have had some fun because he sees everything through the worldview of what they do at Curator and how to take the agent that wants to say plug in like here, this is what I'm looking for, and how to make those ads perform like they had a little bit more customization to, a little more thought to, and I think he's a brilliant marketer. And so what's been really fun with him is to get away from this idea of this purist. Like if I didn't get the view, I didn't deserve the view, right? If I didn't get the like, I didn't deserve the like. To start to realize like there is other ways that we can take this stuff and we can adapt some of those mindsets and some of that framework and get more people that otherwise we will just, that Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, they know that this audience will love it.
Yeah.
And we're not trusting the algorithm, even though we trust it every day. We go on there and we get trapped for an hour and a half because it knows us so well. And it's like, oh, you want to see another golf meme.
But the most important part of this is it's more important for real estate agents than almost any other profession because we have geographic centricity in what we do.
Yeah.
And these platforms are built for localized geographic centricity. Like it is, Facebook has, or Facebook Meta, all of these platforms has the ability to target people in a geographic area. We're crazy not to take advantage of it. What I would love to see is the algorithm telling you that this piece of content that Brad put out works, and you taking that, this is Calgary video, and making sure your goal should be every single homeowner in Calgary needs to watch this video. That needs to be your goal.
Yeah.
If every single homeowner in Calgary watched that video, you have won 10 times over.
Yeah.
Like so I'll give you a crazy example. My team told me recently, I didn't even know about this, by the way. I had like a 60-second reel on Instagram. It has been slow burning for 45 days, right?
I want to get into this. I love this.
45 days slow burn, 1 million views in 45 days, 7,000 leads. Right? I didn't even know this was happening.
Yeah.
So my team was like, hey, what's this video that is generating us all this traction? I'm like, what video are you talking about? It was 45 days ago. So it was, and we posted.
And this is the opposite of what everyone tells.
Right.
Everyone's Instagram is you've got 2 hours in the feed and it's gone.
We put out 2 videos a day, generally speaking. So this was 90 videos deep in my feed. And I'll tell you the crazy part. I was like, oh, as soon as it hit 1 million views, it's actually pinned on my post right now. As soon as it's 1 million views, I was like, oh, maybe if I pin it, it'll get more traction. I pinned it on my post for 2 days, no movement at all. I should have just left it. But the slow burn is amazing. Yeah. I'd be crazy not to run that. Like it is proven that to work. I'd be crazy not to run that video just as a paid ad because just the ManyChat alone has gotten me 7,000 opt-ins.
So we did this with this. We did this moving to Calgary video. Yeah. And I thought we decided to take a real like engineering type, engineered type approach to this. Whereas like, okay, what does watching Mr. Beast videos, everything from the thumbnails to the cadence, and literally that video is actually built off of Mr. Beast saying, we're going to show you everything from a $1 boat to this $100 million yacht, right? And it was just that exact sort of cadence the exact duration of time, we thought, hey, we're still going to put our art, our visuals, our B-roll, all of that on it. But let's keep this so extremely high value through the whole thing that it moves so brisk that they forget they're watching. So now the long form video gets watched 6 minutes, on average per view for maybe a 15-minute video, which at 300,000 views
But dude, think about time on brand.
It's 2 million minutes.
That's time on brand. People forget those. Like, if there's any 3 words that I've randomly came up with, it was those 3 words.
It's brilliant, because what happened was it's like people forget that there's these brands that come up. So all of a sudden, for example, or there's this content that lifts all other pieces. So for example, we broke that video down into like 10 or 12 sections. And we put out the first one just on Instagram as moving to Calgary. And that video got like maybe 5,000 or 6,000 likes, which normally I don't get that kind of stuff, but it started, and it just did that same slow burn. Like every day we could almost count on another 200 or 300 likes and another 10,000 views. And we could count on, all of a sudden, part 2 starts to rise. And it starts lifting part 3 and part 4. And so I often get these agents that will say like, Brad, there's no point doing it in my market or creating that kind of content in my market, because there's all these other guys doing it. And what I realized was, hey, this boat that lifts everything else along with it does not just have to even be in your own feed. This can literally be another channel in your market, another creator in your market, where if you have association or proximity to it for a similar audience, their content will start to lift yours.
Totally.
And it all starts to get grouped together.
Well, here's a small tip for a lot of agents. I've seen real estate agents do this thing, and it like breaks my heart. They'll work on either a reel or especially a long form YouTube video, call it for 2-3 weeks. And especially, you've edited a lot of your stuff. And let's say they're editing it or they spend some money doing it. Say it's okay. Say it's a B+ video, and you put it out. Well, you have no idea what's going to happen. So what people do is for the first 2 days, they're like constantly going back and refreshing and checking how this video has been doing, right? Well, how can you manufacture traction? So I call this dog fooding your own content, right? As soon as your video drops, your 10 best friends, or you have a 50-person email list, it doesn't have to be a lot. Just say, hey, I just recorded this video on moving to Calgary. It has 3 parts. This is what I talk about, this, this, and this. In fact, if you just want to know blank, go to minute 13,
timestamp, yeah.
Right? Click here to watch it. That's it. Click send. So now YouTube is like, wait a minute, how are we getting all these strange organic clicks from we don't know where into YouTube? Looks like a lot of people are sharing this in some way, somewhere. We should probably show this to more people.
Yeah.
So now even, I'd say if the average person has somewhere between 250 and 1,000 people in their email database with leads, et cetera, you can instantly get 250 to 300 like eyeballs on your stuff. And those are the people that actually you want them looking at your stuff anyway. Yeah. These people, they know you, they have interacted with you, they probably opted in, they're cold leads, it doesn't matter. But my favorite way of just jump-starting the algorithm is to dog food your own content.
That's how I got started. I remember I had a renovation company when I was still working half and half. So the contractors, like just to get 30 or 40 views, just so my own vanity was at least like, oh my gosh, I didn't just make this in a vacuum. I would be like, Eric, hey, Eric, please, when you get a chance, take a look at this video. I think you'd really like it, right? And if you don't mind, just hit the little share button or a comment. And you would talk to so many like YouTube guys right now that would say like, oh, you shouldn't, don't do that. It's not pure. And it's like, but listen, as you aggregate an audience, as you bring them together, you need to start getting some sort of action. Some people have to see it. And so what we found is oftentimes we'll give it that 2 or 3 days. So YouTube has found an audience for it. And then we'll get that little bit of a lift from our community. And we're making these videos for people who have intention of selling or buying real estate in Calgary. So if they've already taken steps and shown that they're interested and want to see it from us, just because they didn't opt in through a subscribe button, which usually like 5% of the time is shown to them in their feed anyways. Most of the time you can't even get your subscribe feed. It just doesn't default there anymore, right? So you have to find some other ways to keep staying in front of people's minds. And I think a lot of people don't find all the different ways to leverage their content. Like, so for the average agent, I always tell them, I'm like, listen, if you create that listing tour, this is replacing now your sign-up sheet for an open house. You are no longer asking people where it's all 100%, oh, this is it's clear what I want from you when you give me your contact, but you went to 4 other open houses and no one asked you for it. So I'm now looking like a bad guy because I'm trying to capture this. So instead, it's just a natural conversation like, oh, have you been looking for a while in the area? Oh yeah, no. Do you have a significant other that's also making the decision? Oh yeah. I know they couldn't come by there at the kids' soccer practice. Hey, cool. You know what? I'll tell you what. Did you get a chance to see the listing tour? Oh no. Do you mind if I just text it to you so you can show your husband if he's interested? And then they'd be like, oh great, yeah, thanks. And that's led to so much business. Just a simple thing, because it was a natural point. And for me, I was shy to talk with my friends about being a real estate agent because for fear that they'd think I was going to try to like capture the conversation, like, hey, by the way, if you are thinking about making that move or something. So, but just having something out in the world allowed them to ask me what was going on.
Well, this is, as you said, something super interesting, and so 2 things. One, just a tactical thing. If you have email or a text list, you probably have some kind of welcome sequence. If you do, and if you don't, you should consider it. That essentially says Brad operated into the list. On day 1, he gets something, maybe the PDF. On day 3, he gets something. On day 5, he gets something. On day 10, he gets something. It's actually good to have that. On the day 3, day 5, and day 10, write whatever email you're writing, and in the PS say, hey, by the way, if you're still interested in buying a home in Calgary, I recorded this video. So now, as people are coming to your list, you're organically getting random people clicking on your list as part of their exploration sequence of you. Yeah. So putting that in your drip sequence is a good thing. It's just buried, right? So now old videos will get revived, and now they'll start to see new videos, which is insanely powerful.
So tell me then, I think agents, we think linear, right? We're like, let's do this thing so we can get this action to happen back. But oftentimes, I've been thinking a lot about how I think you always do a great job of speaking in frameworks or principles more than, even though it's very tactical, but that concept of proof over promise. I promise if everyone that's just watching this, they start thinking about it through that world, they'll ask themselves like, wait, am I making a promise right now or am I providing proof?
Correct.
And so I was helping an agent script out a YouTube video, and the video starts off, there's a couple little things, right? It was like, hey, I'm in Cooper's Crossing, the best neighborhood in Airdrie. And I said, it'd be really cool is if just instead you said, hey, did you know I'm in the best or the highest voted community in all of Airdrie? Would you like to know what that is? Right? All of a sudden now you've created just a little curiosity gap, just a little moment where they're like, okay, I'm going to stick around, right? Because if you just told me it's the best, I don't know if I need to watch the rest of the video, right? And then the next line was, hey, by the name, my name is Belle, and I'm your local area expert. But at that point in time, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. In fact, if anything, you've told the audience, I want you to view me this way. Just like if you were to come in and say, Brad, hey, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the president of Real Broker. There's a little bit of an undertone of like,
look at me, I'm awesome.
Do you know who I am? Yeah. And what's amazing is
what you just said, just to not miss the point, the most powerful part of that was, hey, this is Cooper's Crossing, which is the #1 rated community in. But as soon as they say that, if a poll showed up on the screen, proving that it was the #1 of everything else, that's when you win. Then whatever she says after for the next 5 minutes is all true.
Absolutely. And
because it's that artifact that actually solidifies that she is telling the truth.
So just one little aside on that, in our This is Calgary or Moving to Calgary video, there's this moment where we watch on the analytics at about 2 minutes and 17 seconds in, there's a bump. Mm-hmm. And all I say at that one point in time is that Calgary is half the price for a single family home over Vancouver and almost 1.5 times less than it is in Toronto. And we show just the article.
That's it.
The link. We show that thing. And everyone goes back because I know there's a bunch of people from Toronto watching this like, that's bullcrap. I don't believe that, right? And I got to see the proof. But there was that little bit of validation as soon as they saw that piece. The one other piece on that, I think with agents is because we're so linear, we're like, the point has to be made that I'm the person you should think about. And we think way too quickly about that, right? Like it would be just so wrong if we went up to like a person, that we wanted to be friends with or get to know better and be like, I'm your new best friend. The first thing you recoil at is like, I don't want to do this. And I don't want to be here right now. Yeah. So what I said was, hey, what if just you don't introduce yourself, right? Because they're clearly watching you
Yeah.
as you guide them through the entire city. By the time that you're at the end and you've demonstrated that you are an area expert, you know this, you understand the city, you can then say at that time, you can introduce yourself. Say, by the way, right, I'm Bell. And instead of saying that you are an expert, after you've demonstrated the proof, what if you had the humility to just say, hey, I like to consider myself an expert. And what I've found is that if you aspire to be the owner of the Ducks, right, I want to cheer that on. I cheer on anyone who's aspiring to do something different or consider themselves a certain way, but have that humility to say, like, to pull themselves back that little bit. All of a sudden, that response by the audience is like, you can call yourself an expert. You've just demonstrated to me.
Correct.
Like, and you get this immediate connection of like, okay. And because we forget sometimes, I think, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think our number one goal, I think at Real oftentimes, is to really just really break down people's opinion of what they might think a cloud-based brokerage rate might be. I think our whole, my whole goal in my marketing is, in my real estate marketing with my clients, is to break down the idea of what they might think a real estate agent is, which was, to start off our conversation, was that you're all the same, you do too little, and you get paid too much. Mm-hmm. And so if everything that we do demonstrates it without actually having to say that, that assumption might just become Sharran. Well, Sharran does all this stuff. Everyone else, you might not change the frame for all real estate agents.
And you don't have to.
But just for you.
Yeah, and the reason is, right, if you don't have a proof-based sales process, you're going to use their emotion-based buying process.
Yeah.
That's all this is, right?
Yeah.
So in the early part of the presentation, like I'm still in the living room with clients. I don't take any referral fees or anything. It's just me being there so that I can have this conversation well. And it's how fast can I get into my process? Because when they are in my process, they feel safe. When I am in their process, they feel unsafe because they don't know much. I feel like I can't help because I can't break it out.
Yeah.
So that's what happened with most people, because the reason, like, most appointments you come on, when you come with me, you don't get any objections. There's a reason for that, because they have to, I frame and I follow a process. I frame and I follow a process. And then they feel safe in that process, right? And the process is all proof. It's like, I always say this, set a frame. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, today I'm going to tell you about the 3 agreements that govern a real estate transaction. So now they know, until the next part, I'm only going to talk about these 3. I'm not talking about pricing. I'm not talking about marketing. I'm not talking about any of this. I'm talking about 3 agreements that govern a real estate transaction, right? Now that's the frame. Then I make a claim. The claim is, hey, if you know these 3 agreements, which I will gladly take you through, then we are going to have a smooth transaction. I make a claim. Now, proof. Let me show you. Show 1, show 2, show 3, right?
Love it.
So if you just make proof without a frame or a claim, then they're like, why is he randomly showing me stuff that now he's bragging?
Yeah.
But otherwise, the proof is in service of the claim you made. So you got to make the claim, and then, so if she said, hey, the Cooper's Crossing is the number 1, community here, and then she shows proof, that's one thing. Instead, if she just started the video and just put up Cooper Crossing number 1, it's like, what are you claiming? There's nothing to claim. And that gets really interesting.
Oh, that's great. So listen, we have a party to go to.
Yes.
We have a party to go to here in a few minutes. So before we leave, though, business school podcast, president of Real, future owner of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. They've dropped the mighty, right? They've dropped the mighty. Are you going to bring it back? Would you bring it back?
I'd bring it back, but then we need to get Disney to sign off on it.
Okay, fair enough. Sharran, where can people find you? What's the best way to connect with you? I know too many people connect with you already, so I need to invite more.
No, I'm super grateful. The easiest way is Instagram. I spend a lot of my time there. If you want to check out my email list, it's sharran.com/VIP. So it's my private email list. You can join if you'd like. But if you want all the raw and unvarnished stuff that I would think are my best ideas, it's the Business School podcast, and available for free. I have nothing to sell anybody because I work for Brad.
It's true. It's true. And you do a great job. Thanks a lot, Sharran.
Appreciate
you, brother.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, we got some more great ones coming up with other thought leaders. We'd love you to check them out. So don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Branded Podcast.